Hi there, I'm Kathleen Jasper. Today is part 1 of our constructed response series for your Praxis exams. Some Praxis exams require you to write, and I'm going to show you today how to tackle that particular task and an overall strategy to employ so you can achieve on this test. Let's get started. Today is part 1 of our constructed response series. You can apply what I'm going to be talking to you today about to any constructed response that you get, whether it's the SLLA, the PLT, the special ed, the English language arts. These strategies I show you today and what we're going to talk about can be applied to all of those. Now, we have done particular constructed response videos for the PLT, for the 5039 and the SLLA, and I'll link those up. But I just want you to know that this is an overall strategy in part 1 that you can employ on any constructed response section of any Praxis exam that requires you to do a constructed response. Now, a lot of people ask us, how are these constructed responses scored? And ETS breaks it all down on their website, and I will link this up in the description below so you can take a look at it. But the basic way in which they score it is they take your raw score, which means the number that you got correct out of the total number, and they use a weighted formula and turn it into a scale score, which is kind of a mystery, and we can try our best to break that down for you, and I am going to show you how that works. But just know that you have 2 readers per constructed response. So 2 people will read your particular essay. So the first reader will read it, give you a score. Then the second reader will read it and give you a score. If they agree within a certain range, that is your score. So for example, let's say I was doing the special ed constructed response, my first one, because there are 3. We'll go over that in a minute. And my first one, I get a 3 from grader 1 and a 3 from grader 2. I get a 3. That's the highest I can get. Now, let's say on my second constructed response, I get a 3 from grader 1, but then I get a 1 from grader 2. Well, because it's such a difference in scores, ETS will bring in a third reader or a third grader to break that tie, and then they get you a score from there. So it's all broken down on their website. They go through it here. It is a little bit confusing because they're not just taking your raw scores, they're actually turning your raw score into a scale score. But beyond that, what you really just need to focus on are your writing skills for this particular task, the rubric in which they grade you against, and how you can employ those 2 things to achieve on this test. And I'm going to show you that in just a second. All right, so we're going to hop on over to my presentation so I can break it all down for you and so you can understand exactly how the constructed responses are graded and how you should approach them, all right? You're going to have constructed response questions on the special ed, some special ed tests. You're going to have constructed responses on the PLT, the SLLA, and like I said before, the English language arts content analysis 5039, and there are a few others you'll have to write for. This particular approach you can apply to any of those, okay? So we're talking about an overview and how to employ that. Now let's just take a look at a sample blueprint of a test that does have a constructed response. This is how it will look like for any test that has a constructed response. You basically have the multiple choice sections, which are all right here. And in this case, this equals 75% of your total grade, which is the multiple choice. They call it selected response, but selected response is just a fancy word for multiple choice. So, and you can see here in this section format here, the selected response is 75 and the constructed response is 25. So the bulk of your grade will come from the multiple choice. But because the constructed response is 25%, it really does benefit you to try to grab as many points as you can in that writing portion, okay? So that's going to be 25% is going to be the constructed response, okay? So when you want to try to figure out your score, and again, this is just a rough estimate because they do use a weighted scale scoring. What you would do is you would take your total raw score of your multiple choice. So let's just say this has 90 questions. Let's say I got 70 out of 90 questions correct. Your raw score is a 70. That's your raw score. Raw score is just raw. It's like stripped down how many you got correct. But on your score report, you see like a 151 or a 163 or a 142 or whatever it is you get. That's because they use a weighted scale scoring method. Now, I have researched this over and over again, and I found the best explanation from Magoosh, which is another test prep company that I love. They have an awesome program for GRE and other prep resources. They even have some for Praxis. And they broke down the scoring in this way, but this is not an exact science because you are going to have some questions that are worth more. For example, those selected response questions that are choose all that apply, where you have to choose 2 or 3. But let's just say I get 70 out of 90 on the selected response. Well, what I want to do there is I want to get a percentage correct. So I take my raw score, which is a 70, divide that by the total, which is 90, to get my percentage, and I get 0.78. Okay, so that's basically a 78%, right? Now, that is only 75% of my grade. So what I need to do is, let's drop the decimal and just take this 78 here. I have to multiply that by 0.75 because it's only 75%. When I do that, I get approximately 58 or 0.58. You get 0.58, but then what I want to do is I want to take that decimal off and keep it at 58. Now I need to figure out my constructed response scores. Now let's take a look here. For this particular exam, there are 3 constructed response questions. And for this exam, there's a maximum amount of 3 points per constructed response. So if there are 3 constructed response questions and you can have a total of 3 points, there are a total of 9 constructed response questions. Now, let's say I got a 7 out of 9 on the constructed response. 7 is my raw score. Now again, raw scores are not used. They're going to put some sort of weighted scale score on it. But the way we've kind of figured that out is you take your raw score for the constructed response, which is a 7, divide that by the total, which is 9, and I get it's the same as above because 70 over 90, but I get 0.78. I'm going to drop that decimal and I'm going to make it 78. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take 78 and I'm going to multiply that by 0.25 because it's 25%, and I get a 19.5. Let's just round that to a 20. Okay, now what I want to do is take my score that I just did for my multiple choice or selected response here and add that to my constructed response here, CR, and I get 78. And then what they do is they add the 1, which would give me a 178 on this particular exam, okay? Now, it's not exact because this 70 here came from, that's my raw score, but some of those questions may be worth more. I might have had, the multiple choice where I choose more than one, all of that. So this is not exact. This is like a roundabout measure of how to score it, okay? But just understand that you have 75% is for the selected response, and then 25% will be for the constructed response. And you're going to kind of add those together, smush them together, use a scaled score, and that's going to be it. Now, look, all you really have to do is try to get the maximum points you can on the constructed response. And it's not that difficult to do. Let's get into that. All right, so let's take a look at a score of 3 for the constructed response for this particular exam. This is for the special education test. And let me go back to that blueprint right here. The special education test, 5543. All right. This is where we have 5 content categories of selected response and then 1 constructed response section. And there are going to be 3 questions there. All right. So let's take a look at what a score of 3 looks like. First of all, you're going to appropriately address all parts of the question. They actually make this very easy on you, and I'm going to show you how, because they lay out exactly what they want you to do in the question. So you need to make sure you cover all of them. You also want to have a thorough understanding of any stimulus materials presented. So when they say stimulus materials, they're talking about charts, graphs, things like that. It may be some data, a case study. It could be a narrative. It could be a running record where you measured their reading ability. It could be any one of those things, okay? Then we have exhibit strong knowledge of students, subject matter, pedagogy, and facts relevant to the question. So in this case, you're going to want to know about differentiation. You're going to want to know about accommodations. You're going to want to know about data-driven decisions. Data-driven. You're going to want to know about certain strategies because you're going to have to talk about those. So you're going to need to know some lingo here that you're going to want to use, because in this last bullet, provide strong explanations that are supported by details. The details piece is the specific, the specificity, the example part. You don't want to just give a general statement in the constructed response. You want to actually name something. So you might say something like in informal reading inventory, a running record, a fluency read, note-taking strategies, literature circles, specific strategies, specific things you would employ for this. Not just like, oh, we should accommodate the student. Well, what does that accommodation look like? What are you going to do? You got to get specific in here, and I'm going to show you how to do that in a second. So we have, make sure you get all parts, and that'll be wrapped up in the task. I'm going to show you how to do that. Then we're going to do the thorough understanding of what's going on. We're also going to need to be specific in your details, and we're going to use those knowledge of subject matter, students, things like that. For this particular exam, because it is an example from the special ed, you're going to want to know about IEPs, accommodation, differentiation, 504s, all the different things that you guys do in the special education classroom. All right, so now let's take a look at what a sample question will look like so that I can show you exactly how to employ that rubric so that you can do this, okay? Now, we are in the study companion, the ETS study companion, which I think is the most important document that you can possibly study when prepping for your Praxis exams. This is the 5543, so this is going to be the special education, core knowledge and mild to moderate applications, and this is going to be the constructed response section, okay? Now, not all special ed tests have you write, so don't get confused. If you're taking a different special ed test and you thought, oh my gosh, I don't have writing on mine. Do I have writing on mine? You may not. All you need to do is check that blueprint like I referenced in the beginning, and if it says down at the bottom, 25% constructed response, then you are going to have to write for this exam. Now, let's take a look at the resources they provide you here. This is on page 20, and again, we have a sample test question here. Now, they give you the scoring guide of what a 3 is, what a 2 is, what a 1, and what a 0 is. So this is where I find out what the total possible points are. For this particular constructed response, we can get as high of a score of 3. And if there are 3 constructed response questions and I get a score of 3 on all of them, I can get a total of 9 points. So that's what we want to shoot for, because this is not that difficult. It's not that hard to score a 3. Now, let me show you an example of a 3. You can see here, they wrote 1, 2, 3, and I'm going to show you why they did that. And then look, this is all they do. They answer it in short responses. And that is a score of a 3. They show you here that it's a score of a 3. So you do not have to write a huge document for them. All they want you to do is answer the question. All right. That's the first part of the rubric. Answer all of the question or complete the entire task. Let me show you how to do that. Now, you're going to get something like this. Here it says directions. One constructed response follows. And then it's going to say this on every single one. Carefully read and follow the specific directions for the question. If the question has more than one part, be sure to answer each part of the question. At a test administration, you will write your answers to 3 constructed response questions on the screen. So this is all going to be the same. Forget it. Basically, what they're telling you to do is read it carefully and complete the entire task, okay? Now, most of you will start here before you watch this video. You're going to read this whole thing here. There's a teaching scenario, or you'll read the entire case study or whatever it is, right? I don't want you to do that. I want you to start right here at the task. The task is telling you what to do. And that's section 1 of the rubric. Complete the entire question, or make sure you answer the entire question. Here is what you're supposed to do. List 3 types of data the teacher should collect prior to making the referral. All right, I haven't read it yet, so I don't know what's going on, but I know I'm going to have to think of what are 3 types of data I can collect. And already in my mind, I want to be thinking of, okay, formative data, maybe observational data, anecdotal data, survey data. Okay, yep. Or maybe it's going to be test scores or informal reading inventory. Just start going through a little bit of what you could collect. Everything is data, right? A spelling test is data. Informal reading inventory is data. A running record is data. Observations are data. A math quiz is data. A conversation with the student and documenting what the student says is data. So remember, it's going to be easy to find 3 because basically there are so many ways in which you can collect data in your classroom. Then the second part of the question is explain the value of collecting each of these types of data. All right, so that is very important. Not only am I going to have to name the data that I need, but then I have to explain why would I choose that and what will it do? How will it help? What's the importance of collecting that data? All right. Now, let's just take a look. So we've got something here. We have by mid-October, Catherine's 3rd grade teacher has become concerned. She has great difficulty reading on grade level. Her work is largely illegible. She's got some issues there. Catherine does perform well on some mathematics work, but does not require interactions with her students. So she is socially, something's going on here. She's not making eye contact, okay? So as soon as I start to read like not making eye contact, I need to think about observational data, anecdotal data. That's what's going to go on in my mind, more qualitative data. Here we have reading on grade level. That's another red flag here. Okay, informal reading inventory, running record, maybe some fluency reads, things like that to try to gauge what's going on there. Some of her work is illegible, meaning you can't read it, contains fragments, numerous spelling errors. All right, maybe we want to do a mini spelling test where I focus on phonics or phonemic awareness, something like that. And the teacher has decided to refer Catherine for special education evaluation. So the last sentence here, and I always say work backwards, the teacher has decided to refer her to special education. So, and again, we already read this, list 3 types of data the teacher should collect prior and explain why collecting those types of data is going to help the teacher, refer Catherine. And here it says right here, be sure to relate the types of data right here to Catherine's reading, writing, and social behavior. Notice they broke it all down for you here. I need 3 types of reading, 3 types of data. So I'm going to do, first one's going to be some sort of reading data. Second one is going to be some sort of writing data. And the third is going to be some sort of social behavior data. Boom. It's all laid out right there. That's why I say task first. Task first, task first. All right. Now let's see what this person did. Now this is a score of a 3. So we have anecdotal info concerning social interactions. Well, that's right here. That's where they laid it out right here. So number 1, done. Anecdotal, remember, that's formative data where you observe, you take down notes, you're writing basically little scenarios of what's going on as she's doing social interactions. Writing sample, boom, right there. There's my writing data, easy peasy. And then for the reading evaluation, IRI, or informal reading inventory, to determine reading level. Now, you may not be a reading teacher. You may not know what an IRI is. Hopefully, if you're working with younger students, you know what an IRI is. But if not, you could just do like a fluency read or some sort of thing where you are collecting data on her reading. So notice 1, 2, and 3, right here, that completes this part of the task, lists 3 types of data. And it also helps with number 2. Make sure you relate the types of data to reading, writing, and social behavior. Also notice how it is completely laid out 1, 2, and 3. Super easy for the reader or the grader to identify, find it. Where is it? It's right here. You don't want the reader to have to go hunting for your answer. Lay it out easy to grab like this here, all right? Now let's look at the second part of the question or the task. Here, 1, 2, 3 matches up with 1, 2, 3 here. Now I've listed the types of data, and here I explain why I'm going to use that type of data. So here we have Catherine is not socializing. Anecdotal info must be collected to evaluate her behavior, such as interactions on the playground, cafeteria, and physical education. Notice specifics. Interactions on the playground, cafeteria, and physical education. Specifics. That hits that other part of the rubric where it needs to be backed up with specific details. A checklist could be used to measure Catherine's behavior in these situations. Field notes could also be gathered. 2 more specific examples. So right here, the explanation of value is very good because not only did I tell you why I'm collecting it, but I'm also giving you specific examples as to what I'm collecting. All right. Now let's look at number 2. We're talking about writing samples here, which matches up right here to number 2. Writing samples should be analyzed to see patterns in Catherine's spelling errors, and that was in the teaching scenario. Does she need help with CVE words, CVC words, etc.? Right there, I got specific. Consonant, vowel, consonant, silent E words, consonant, vowel, consonant words. Now, maybe you don't know these because you're a new teacher. You could say, we're going to take a look at spelling patterns to see if she's using her blends correctly, to see if her phonics is in place. You know, you can use specifics without going, super specific like this. This person knows, this type of instruction. You might be new, but you can't just say, oh, we need to look at her spelling. You need to kind of focus in on, does she understand blends? Does she understand maybe compound words? Make up some stuff that spelling would help you figure out. An analysis of the writing samples would also show Catherine's use of fragments versus complete sentences. Another specific example that actually goes back to the teaching scenario because I believe they say it here, contains fragments and numerous spelling errors. So they relate it back to that particular teaching scenario. So good there. And now finally, number 3, Catherine may be uncomfortable in class because of low reading level. An informal reading inventory could be used to determine Catherine's reading level. IRI, informal reading inventory. All right. Now, that's specific. That is a specific piece of data. And then she goes in to say the IRI could also show problems with decoding. Another specific example that could be related to Catherine's poor spelling ability. Now, this score of a 3 is great for many reasons. Number 1, it completes the entire task and answers the question in its entirety. It listed 3 types of data, and it told me why I chose that data and what is the value of the data. And it got specific in terms of writing, social behavior, and reading. Okay. I didn't collect 3 reading samples. I didn't collect 3 writing samples. I didn't collect 3 social behavior examples. I did a reading, a writing, and a social example because that's what the task asked me. And that's why it's so important to start here and map out, even on your scratch paper, what am I being asked to do? 3 types of data. Why are they important? Make sure they're about reading, writing, and social interaction. All right. Now let's take a look at number 2, a score of a number 2, or a score of 2, I should say, and why it's a 2 and not a 3. I really like the way they gave this example because it shows one thing that I know to be true about these constructed responses. First of all, they do have the 3 types of data, and one is reading, one is writing, spelling test could be considered writing, and the other one is social behaviors. So that's a thumbs up. Then when they go into the explanation, look at how vague this is here. While they explain it, they don't give specifics like they do in the top one. The top one said CVE word or CVCE words, CVC, phonics, fragments, informal reading inventory. They really dig into the specificity. This one says, Catherine is not able to read at grade level, but by doing a reading sample, it can be determined why she cannot. That's not enough. Yeah, of course, if you do a reading sample. But how are you going to figure that out? So it needs to be more specific. Look at number 2. A spelling test will check her level and type of errors. Well, of course, that's what spelling tests do, but I need more specifics here. And 3, a behavioral checklist will record Catherine's social interactions with classmates. Of course, all you did was explain the strategies. You didn't tell me why they're of value specifically. So that's why this is a 2 and not a 3. All right. So that's kind of the breakdown of how to approach this. Number one, go to your task first, jot down on your scratch paper why and what you need to do. Then go specifically to anything in the task. Like for here, we need a reading, writing, and social behavior example. So write that down. And then as you write, make sure you're basically using it as a checklist that you are finishing up all things in the task. The second thing is be specific. Make sure you're outlining, specific examples and also specific outcomes you're looking for. And the third thing, make sure you have time to proof it so that you can, make sure it's not riddled with grammatical errors or spelling errors. You can make some mistakes as long as they don't get in the way of the understanding of the passage or the understanding of your writing. But if it's got a ton of grammatical errors and spelling errors, they're going to dock you points there because they're not going to be able to understand it. All right, so that wraps things up for our overall strategy for the constructed response section for any Praxis exam. Remember to use these strategies when you're faced with a constructed response so you can receive the highest score possible on that part of your exam. If you like our videos, please feel free to subscribe to our YouTube channel, tell your friends you're here, and hit the notifications button so you get notified when we upload new content. Thank you so much and have an awesome day.